appears on your timeline. Spreading love, feeling so divine. Tune in, don't miss a single drop. Unwrap joy till the beat stops.
What's up, Team No T, and welcome back to Unwrapped. It's me, Tosh, and we are here for the final day of our 12 days of Sitcom Christmas. Today, we are going to be talking about the Jeffersons, Season 7, Episode 8. This one is called All I Want for Christmas. I'm going to put this here to remind everybody of what we're looking for in this episode. Now, let's get into the recap. In this episode, we find the Jeffersons preparing for Christmas, but unlike other sitcoms, they're doing their preparations literally 5 to 6 days before Christmas. So kudos to the Jeffersons. Now, you know how Weezy does her work down at the Help Center? Well, this year, she is so happy because Tom Willis has agreed to be Santa for the children, and the children in question are some orphans from the local orphanage. They're coming over and having a Christmas party at the Help Center. Now, y'all see I got company, so you might hear them in the background, but we're going to get through this last day of Sitcom Christmas. And look at what it is. We got Marla Gibb. She's coming back. Remember, we already saw her in 227. We are seeing her again in the role that she is probably most known for, which is Florence, the housekeeper at the Jeffersons. George and Florence were Martin and Pam before Martin and Pam knew that they even existed. And Weezy is trying to convince George to come on down to the Help Center for the Christmas party for the children. She feels like it would help get him into the Christmas spirit, but George is not having it. That is when we get some bad news. But the bearer of bad news is the beautiful Roxy Roker, mother to Lenny Kravitz, who plays Helen Willis in The Jeffersons. Now, she comes in to tell them that Tom, who we do not see in this episode, sprained his ankle. He will be unable to play Santa. So now Weezy is scrambling for a new Santa. And who will she tap to be Santa? George! George does not want to do it, but you know Weezy is not taking no for an answer, and soon we find ourselves at the Help Center with George as Santa Claus, and he is reveling in his duties as old Saint Nick. He's asking all the children what they want for Christmas. He is finding so much joy in knowing that he'll be able to provide these things for these kids until he runs into one really smart kid. Now, before we get to the really smart kid, these kids are having a hard time at first accepting George as Santa Claus because he's black. We know in 1980 Santa Claus wasn't black. Well, now we see a whole lot more black Santas, but black Santas were like unicorns back in 1980. So anyway, Billy, that's the little boy's name. He's a tough nut to crack. He's telling all the other kids, ain't no Santa Claus. He's telling all the other children to not put their faith in this man because he's here for Christmas and then you'll never see him again. So George wanted to prove this little boy wrong. So he put the little boy on his lap and he was like, whatever you want, tell me what it is, and I promise I will get that for you for Christmas. And that little boy asked Santa George for family. He wanted to be adopted for Christmas. Well, we know that that's just a little outside of Santa's purview, but George did not go out without a fight. George knew that he had 5 days to find this little boy a family, to find him parents, to find him somebody who would take them into their home and call him theirs. And he looked everywhere. And when I say everywhere, he was asking random people if they wanted to adopt a child. He even asked Mr. Bentley. Mr. Bentley, who is a bachelor by trade, was even asked if he wanted to adopt, and Mr. Bentley was like, I'm not about to give up all this freedom and my depression and anxiety and everything that I have. I will not give that up to be a father to a child. So now George is feeling like he is going to let Billy down. So when it came time to go back to the help center the night before Christmas, George was not going. George was trying to duck out of even showing up because he did not want to show up and have to tell Billy that he was not able to fulfill his wish. It even got to the point that he asked Wheezy, could they adopt Billy? And Wheezy was like, we a little too old to be parents. Well, it's funny because that's what they're saying about Billy. Billy actually had an opportunity on the night before Christmas to be adopted, but the family decided that Billy was too old. Now, mind you, Billy is 10 years old. But as in a lot of cases, parents want to adopt a child that has not been programmed already. They would like to download all of their values and their beliefs into a child instead of getting one that they have to strip of its original programming and then insert their programming. It's just like buying a computer. Well, George had already bought all the gifts for all the other children at the help center, so Wheezy was still going down there. But she did not hesitate to tell George how disappointed that she was in him for not going down there and at least passing out the gifts to the children that he was able to get gifts for, and for trying to explain to Billy why he was unable to fulfill his wish. But, you would have thought that Wheezy would have been the person to get through to him, but really, it was Florence. Because Florence told him after Mrs. Jefferson walked out the door, she told him, look, I've called you a lot of things. I done called you big-headed. I done called you apple-headed. I've called you short. But she was like, but I never thought I would have to call you a coward. And between Wheezy and Florence, George put that Santa suit back on and he went down to the help center because he was going to explain to Billy exactly why he was not able to fulfill his wish. But he also got to see the joy on the other children's faces as they opened the gifts that he was able to get for them. So when he finally had his moment with Billy, he told Billy, look, it wasn't for lack of trying. I tried to find you a family. But you know what? These children that you're older than at this orphanage, they look up to you. They need you. And you are like their family. In fact, they may be all the family you need. And Billy, even though he was at first cynical about it, when the other children were walking up to him asking him how to fix their toys, the toys needed batteries put in a certain way. And the little girl's toy, something happened to the arm of it. And they were all coming to Billy for help. Billy realized that these people at the orphanage were his family. So George was able to kind of fulfill his wish on Christmas Day. In some ways, this episode made me sad because some things have not changed. So, like yesterday's episode of Moesha, I talked about how the perception around a 50-year-old has changed from 1998 to 2024. But when it's a child that is in need of a family, that perception hasn't changed as much. People still overlook the older children in these group homes that need fostering and that need to be adopted. They look at them as if they have aged out of love. And I think that's a terrible thing. I have a niece and a nephew who were adopted into our family, and they are not adopted children. They are my family. And I see the love that my brother and his wife were able to provide to them, but they received those children as infants. I think that if I had the means, I would try to adopt a child a little older so that they know that they too are worthy of love. So while I love this episode of The Jeffersons because it does not paint an unrealistic picture of life for these children, and it doesn't make it look like it would have been just like a snap of a finger to find them a family, it does tug at my heart just a bit. As far as our elves on shelves, we got our Black Santa in George. And we also got George saying ho 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 like a plethora of times, like so many times Wheezy had to tell him no more hoes. We didn't get the Trinity, but the Trinity really didn't exist in 1980, with the exception of this Christmas. The fashion was 1980s fashion, and again, makes me think of my mom and my aunts. Man, Wheezy always makes me think of one of my aunts in particular, and my aunt was the most well dressed, not flashy, just well-dressed person that you would ever want to meet. That was my Aunt Dan. My Aunt Dan is still with me. In fact, I don't know if she's watching this. Hey, Dan. We didn't get a surprise guest. We didn't get a random white person. The elves on shelves weren't that plentiful, but this story was very meaningful. So tell me, have you watched The Jeffersons? All I Want for Christmas, Season 7, Episode 8? If you have, let me know down in the comments below. While you're there, make my Christmas dreams come true. I'm trying to reach 2,000 subscribers. If you like this video, like the video, and then hit the subscribe button so that you can join the Noti family. Also, turn your notifications on so that you won't miss when I start uploading again next year. I have enjoyed spending the last 12 days with you going over sitcoms for Christmas, and from my family to yours, have a very, very Merry Christmas and an outstanding New Year. Peace.
Tasha Pierce on your timeline, spreading love, feeling so divine. Tune in, don't miss a single drop. Unwrap joy till the beats